Hello audience. Yep, we're still working on the truck. This time we're going to make some proper floorboards for it. Or at least what I consider to be proper. Now these are the old ones I've been using. I didn't put much effort into them, they're just cheap plywood and they've since warped pretty bad and they've got cutouts in them for stuff that this no longer has, so it's time for new ones. However, these do fit pretty well, so they'll make excellent patterns. Now since this is a homemade cab, not built to any Ford specification, there's no right or wrong way to do this, but when I put this together, I did make these dimensionally the same as a stock open car, so that's the theme I'm going with. To start with, I got a new floor mat, which is kind of useless and a bit unnecessary for a work truck. However, they do dress up the interior pretty good, especially when they're trimmed really well and they have some kind of polish on them. They look good while still having that utilitarian look to them. Also, to me, this is one of the few things that really makes it feel like a Model T. It's the black floor mat with the Ford script on it. It's also going to provide some acoustic insulation, I believe. And since we're going that far, I also bought pedal trim for it. Now, one little detail I want to point out just for the fun of it before we get started is I don't know if all the open cars were done this way, but at least the earlier cars, at least the original ones that I've seen, on the floorboards, the groove in the sills that held them in is about 3/4 of an inch deep, and the floorboards themselves are only about 5/8 of an inch thick, somewhere in there, which left a step. Now that step was taken up by the floor mat. The floor mat was cut to fit just over the floorboards, and the sills were left exposed, and the step between them held them in place. And when I do all that for this car, I'm probably going to do them that way, because that's the authentic way. But the way most people do them today is you make the floorboards out of 3/4 inch plywood, because it's stronger, which leaves them flush with the sills, and then the reproduction floor mats are made oversized, so you just trim them to fit the entire floor. And that's what I'm going to do with the truck. I ended up not getting enough plywood to make all 3 pieces, which I kind of did on purpose, because I just needed a little bit more and I'd have to get another probably 2 feet worth, and that would have cost a lot more. So I have a set of temporary floorboards I made for the touring car, which I don't really need, and this piece is just about what I need. Just need to trim it down a little. Now I have them pretty much cut out. This one is pretty much the floor. I have it cut out for the parking brake, the starter switch, and the shifter for the aftermarket transmission. Now the hole for the parking brake and for the pedals, I deliberately cut them too small because I'm not entirely sure where I want the trim piece to go on it, and once I figure that out, I'll cut the rest of this out to match that. Also got these two roughed out. Now these pretty much just have a regular old 90-degree cut all the way around them, but this one at the bottom I put a slight angle on it so that it matches up with that. And then the upper one, did the same thing, cut this at an angle because this goes against the firewall. Now the last set that I made, I didn't put much effort into them, I just joined them together like that, but these typically have a lap joint between them, so I made them with about 3/4 of an inch overlap, and I'm going to trim a groove in each one of these. Now, this is one problem I've run into before, and I'm sure many of you also have. Now, when you install the pedal trim, you just logically, you install it in a place where the pedals don't touch it on either extremity. There's also a trim piece for the parking brake. You do the same thing. Then you put the floor mat on, adjust that to where it looks good, and the hole for it doesn't line up with the plates on either this or the parking brake. Now, for some reason, the cutout for the pedals seems to be a bit low, and the cutout for the parking brake seems to be a bit forward. I don't know if these are not made right or the originals are that way, but it doesn't really matter because these are pre-made. There's not really much adjustment to it. So I start with this and work around it. I install the floor mat, get it about where there's a happy medium, where it lines up okay with the pedals and the parking brake, and then mark out where the openings are on the floorboard, and now I know exactly where the trim needs to go. So I marked the opening for the floor mat, and then measured out the dimension of the pedal plates. And I discovered if I center these exactly, there's still enough room to allow the pedals for full travel. Now, the seam across here, I tried to make that exactly where the seam on the plates would be, and I don't know what went wrong, but obviously that didn't happen. I mean, it bothers me, but not enough to start over. I can still make it work this way, so I'm just going to use it. So now I just need to open up these notches until the plates fit in them. And that's how it came out. That's just about the way I wanted it. The plates are centered just about perfectly with the floor mat. And now they're pretty much ready to go. I'll point out a few things at this stage. I had to add these wood blocks here because, like I said, I put the seam in the wrong place, so I had to add wood to attach the wood screws to. Also, I ended up notching this out too much, so I had to glue some veneer on here. Also had to glue a piece on here because I cut it too short. But none of that's really a problem. It'll work that way. So, before we put them in for good, we'll give them a layer of paint. First, cover them with this stuff, and then this stuff. And now they're pretty much done. Went over them with a coat of primer and 2 coats of black Rust-Oleum. And yeah, it's not the greatest paint job. There's some really deep brush strokes and some dirt in them, but it'll work. Now these parts across here where the floorboards interlock with each other, I kept the paint really thin because of how precision that is, and I still had to scrape a little bit of paint off around it to make it work. Now because I ended up putting the seam in the wrong place, one side effect to that is the floorboards now interlock. Yeah. Which makes them a lot more difficult to install, but theoretically they should be a lot more stable. Now, as much as I want to install these right now, the paint's still not entirely dry, and if I do, they're going to glue themselves together, so I'm just going to have to put them aside for a few days. One more thing I'm going to do is install this. It's a heat shield that goes behind the pedals. Now, some argue if this was used by Ford or if it was an aftermarket accessory, but it attaches like so. I don't know how effective they are. It's probably going to make the floorboards more difficult to install and remove. But what I really like about this is, without it, if you look through the grooves in the pedal, you can see the street, and that's kind of tacky. This makes it look a little more finished. And if you're wondering, these have been available new over the years. I don't know if anyone's selling them now. So this one I just homemade and just guessed the dimensions, and we'll see if it works. And the final step, trim the floor mat to fit. And now it's done, and it looks pretty good. By pretty good, I mean it actually looks a little too nice for this, probably. It's not only dressed up the interior, but it's dressed up the entire truck. It looks like some kind of decent budget restoration now. Now the floor mat, it's not sitting perfectly flat because it's been rolled up for who knows how long. And this will flatten out after a few days of it sitting here, but that's getting a little too picky. It like I said, looks pretty good as is. Another thing I'll point out is if you have some kind of aftermarket transmission with a shifter, the shifter and the parking brake need to be parallel with each other, otherwise it's really hard to lift the floor mat in and out without ripping it. One trick you can do, if that's not the case, is cut a slit in it so it comes off easier. The only problem with this is the floor mat is more prone to tearing in this area, so I'll have to be really careful installing and removing it. Well, that turned out pretty well. In spite of the mistakes that I made, I'm actually very pleased with the results. So the next thing to do is finish the hood, which at the time of filming this I've already done it. I'm still working on editing the video for that, so you'll probably see that pretty soon. But anyway, that's it for now. So thank you for watching, and we'll see you next time.